They say you should marry for love. I married for Wi-Fi. And a roof that didn't leak. My name is Kim Misiak, and at 24 I became the wife of my best friend's uncle, a man 15 years my senior, to save my family from ruin. It was supposed to be a business transaction. A simple, clean solution. I just never read the fine print, which stated I might accidentally fall in love with my husband, and that he was hunting for the one person who could destroy his company, me. The eviction notice was a cold, final slap. My father's small printing business had collapsed, drowning our family in debt. We had 72 hours before we'd be on the street. My best friend of 10 years, Choi Yuna, saw my world crumbling. She came from old money, the kind that came with generational stability and a sprawling family network. My uncle can help, she declared, grabbing my hands. He's rich, he's single, and he's pragmatic. Her uncle, Choi Minyu, was a legend. The founder and CEO of Aegis Security, a company that built digital fortresses for other corporations. He was 39, fiercely private, and famously married to his work. The few times I'd seen him at family functions, he was a storm cloud in a tailored suit, handsome, intimidating, and utterly unreachable. Yuna dragged me to his penthouse office, a glass-walled fortress overlooking the Han River. I pleaded my case, my voice shaking, offering to work as his assistant, a cleaner, anything to get an advance on a salary. Minyu listened, his expression unreadable. He was even more imposing up close, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. I have a different proposal, he said, his voice a low, calm baritone that silenced the room. A contractual marriage, for 1 year. I stared, sure I'd misheard. Yuna gasped. He laid it out with cold precision. His investors were traditional. They saw his single status as a liability, a sign of instability. A young, presentable wife would solidify their confidence ahead of a major merger. In return, he would clear all my family's debts, provide them with a new apartment, and pay me a generous sum at the end of the contract. No intimacy, no emotions, a simple exchange of needs. It's insane, I whispered. Is your family's future not worth 1 year of your life? He asked, his gaze piercing. He was right, it was. With a trembling hand, I signed the contract. The wedding was a small, lavish, and utterly cold affair. I moved into his monstrously large, minimalist home. We had separate wings. Our interactions were scripted, polite greetings, coordinated public appearances, and silent dinners. I was a ghost in my own marriage. To maintain my sanity, I retreated into the one thing that had always been my sanctuary, the digital world. At night, in my room, I was Nix, a ghost in the machine, an ethical hacker who took on side jobs to help small businesses fend off corporate espionage. It was my secret, my power. And it was the one thing my new husband would have fired me for on the spot. One evening, a month into our arrangement, he was uncharacteristically agitated. Over dinner, he finally spoke about work. Someone is targeting Aegis, he said, pushing his food around his plate. A hacker, they call themselves Nix. They've breached our peripheral servers twice now, not to steal data but to leave a calling card, a digital raven. They're toying with us. If they can get past our defenses, so can our competitors. This merger, everything I've built, it's at risk. My blood turned to ice. Nix, my alias. He looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time. I've assembled the best cybersecurity team in the country. We'll find them. I forced a smile, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I'm sure you will. That night, I stared at my dark monitor, the weight of my double life crushing me. The man I was supposedly betraying was my husband. The company I was inadvertently threatening was now my financial lifeline, and the hunter was sleeping just 2 doors down from the prey. Living with Choi Minyu was like watching a glacier melt in slow motion. The formidable CEO had layers I never expected. I saw the way he quietly supported Yuna's art career, despite his family's disapproval. I found him one night asleep at his desk, glasses askew, surrounded by blueprints, a vulnerability that made my heart ache. He started asking for my opinion on trivial things, the color for a new lobby, the music for a corporate event. My wife role began to feel less like an act and more like a partnership. Meanwhile, the pressure from Nix mounted. His team was getting closer. I had to be smarter, covering my tracks while simultaneously using my access as Nix to investigate the real threat to Aegis, a malicious insider working with a rival company. I was hacking my own husband's company to save it, and the irony was a constant, gut-wrenching knot in my stomach. The spice came from the proximity. A brush of hands as I handed him coffee, the scent of his cologne on a jacket he'd left on my chair. The way his eyes would linger on me during a fake, loving glance for the photographers, and the flicker of something real I'd see in them. The crisis hit during a crucial investor gala. Minyu was on stage, delivering a speech about Aegis's impenetrable security, when the massive screens behind him went black. Then, the digital raven appeared, followed by a message. "Your castle has fallen. The crown jewels are mine." Panic erupted. The rival company had used my Nix persona as a smokescreen for their own massive data heist. They were stealing the core encryption algorithms, the heart of Aegis. Minyu's face was a mask of cold fury and humiliation. He rushed from the stage, his team in chaos. I stood there, in my elegant gown, feeling like the biggest fraud in the world. He had been right to hunt Nix. I had been arrogant, and now I had given his enemies the perfect scapegoat. I found him later in his home office, pouring a stiff drink, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loose. The defeat in his posture was devastating. "I failed," he said, not looking at me. "Everything I built, it's over." This was my fault. I couldn't let him fall for a crime I inspired. "There might be a way," I said, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "What?" "I'm not just a girl from a poor family you married, Minyu." I walked to his computer, my heart hammering. "The backdoor they used. It's a variant of one I found and patched in a small bank server last month. I know a little about coding." It was a massive risk, but the look of sheer, desperate hope on his face was my undoing. For the next 48 hours, we didn't sleep. We worked side by side in his office, a mountain of empty coffee cups between us. I guided his team, feeding them intuitions and lucky guesses that were actually my expertise as Nix. I watched him in his element, a brilliant, strategic leader, and my respect for him blossomed into something deeper, something real. During a late-night break, we were on the terrace, the city lights spread out before us. The air was cool, the silence comfortable. "Who are you, Kim Masiak?" he asked softly, leaning on the railing next to me. "You solve complex algorithms my PhDs struggle with. You have a calm in a crisis that I've only seen in veteran CEOs." I looked at him, at the man who was no longer a stranger, but my partner. "Maybe you shouldn't have judged your wife by her contract." He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the line of my jaw. The touch was electric, a world away from our business arrangement. Maybe I was a fool. He leaned in, and this time the kiss wasn't for an audience. It was slow, deep, and full of all the unspoken words between us. The respect, the attraction, the shared battle. It was the moment our marriage of convenience caught fire. When we finally traced the hack back to the insider, we had our culprit. But as we prepared to take the evidence to the board, I made a decision. I couldn't let the Nix secret hang over us. The night before the confrontation, I sat at my laptop and typed a full confession. I was ready to face his wrath, to lose everything, just to be honest with the man I had fallen in love with. Love makes you brave, or stupid. Sometimes both. The morning of the board meeting, I placed the printed confession on his desk. My hands were steady. I was prepared for the explosion, for the betrayal in his eyes. He read it in silence, his face unreadable. When he finished, he looked up, and I saw not anger, but a dawning, awestruck understanding. "All this time," he said, his voice quiet with wonder, "the ghost I was hunting was the woman saving me from the shadows." "You're not furious," I whispered. He stood and came around the desk, stopping in front of me. "Miss Siak, you just helped me save my company using the very skills I was trying to hire. You acted when you had no reason to, other than to do what was right." A slow, proud smile spread across his face. "You're not a liability, you're a goddamn genius, and you're my wife." He didn't expose me. Instead, he presented our findings to the board, with me by his side. We exposed the corrupt executive and neutralized the threat from the rival company. The merger was saved. In the aftermath, he didn't just offer me a new contract. He tore the old one up. He proposed to me again, for real this time, in the same office where our transaction began. "Kim Masiak," he said on one knee, "the best decision I ever made was a business one. But the best part of my life is the woman you are. Will you marry me? Not for a year, but for all of them." Our second wedding was everything the first wasn't, filled with laughter, genuine tears, and the blessing of our families, including a thrilled Yuna. I didn't just become his wife. I became his partner at Aegis, heading a new ethical hacking division, using my skills not from the shadows, but in the light. 1 year later, we stood on the terrace of our home, his arms wrapped around me. The city lights of Seoul twinkled below, but my world was right here. "I married my best friend's uncle for Wi-Fi," I mused, leaning back against his chest. He chuckled, his breath warm against my ear. "And I married a hidden savior to save my company." He turned me to face him, his eyes full of a love that had rewritten both our stories. But we both found a love that was better than any business deal. We found our forever.